Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
8:06. It's our fourth hour of 4 hours every morning starting at 5 a.m. If you missed anything up until now, go ahead and subscribe and download our podcast. Speaking of podcasts, Bethany Mandel, you should really look into doing a podcast. That would be a great idea for you.
I should. It's called The Mom Wars. Thanks for listening, Larry O'Connor. It is available anywhere you get your podcast, and if you want to hear all things mom and wars, The Mom Wars is the place for you.
The Mom Wars. That sounds like, I mean, it could get violent. It could get really ugly.
I mean, my co-host is British, and so we really rehash.
I want a front row seat to the Mom Wars. Coming up in 30 minutes, Sean Spicer will join us. He knows a thing or two about politics. In fact, he's forgotten more about politics than most people will ever know in this town. We like tapping into his genius. So Sean Spicer coming up in 30 minutes. Right now, KT McFarland joins us, forgotten more about foreign policy and national security than most people in this town. We have smart guests, Bethany.
Thank God they have to make up for the hosts.
I was going to say it myself. Don't put yourself in that. The secret to doing a good talk radio show is to surround yourself by people who are smarter than you.
There we go.
KT McFarland leads that list as she joins us now. KT, good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. It's always a pleasure. Thank you.
So Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is spending a week in Washington, D.C. with an incredible security footprint, by the way. Now listen, he needs the security, but good Lord, it was tough to get around wherever Bibi was this week. And lots of high-level conversations. In fact, one pretty infamous meeting, one-on-one with the president, third one in a day, I think, where the prime minister called for it himself. What are you hearing here in terms of the next step for a lasting peace in the Middle East?
Well, one thing that President Trump does not want to do is send ground forces anywhere. So whatever the next step is of securing Gaza, and it's really the issue is the day after. I don't think they're that upset or concerned with what happens in the next 60 days. I think they do feel that they've got a ceasefire in the works, a prisoner exchange, but then what happens the day after all that? Does Israel stay in Gaza? Does Hamas leave Gaza? Does somebody else come in and guarantee the peace in Gaza? Because the one thing you know is you can't just walk away because Gaza will be reconstituted by Hamas, so you'll have the same old problem all over again. So that will be the biggest topic of conversation. One thing that I'm hearing from my friends in the administration is that they very much want to have it be a Middle East solution. So in other words, it shouldn't be the United States imposes a solution, but the Arab countries in the region, particularly the wealthy Arab countries, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, they would provide whatever they would shoulder whatever the costs are, and that they would participate in whatever the peacekeeping force was.
So there's been a lot of sort of back and forth conversation from the last time, actually, Benjamin Netanyahu was in town, about this plan to relocate a lot of Palestinians out of Gaza. We didn't hear about it for a long time, and a lot of smart people thought that, maybe that was just sort of hubris. But now we're hearing it again in the last few days. What do you think the likelihood of it is of that plan of, relocating millions of Palestinians out of that territory?
Well, here's the problem with it. I mean, it makes a lot of sense, right? Because 97% of Gaza is in rubble and 99% of Palestinians are unemployed. So why build on the rubble? You're just going to have the same problem. The biggest issue, though, is although the Arab neighbors, and including in that the Egyptians, they don't want the Palestinians. Yeah. So they've said, it's a great idea, but we don't want them in our country because they're just going to import revolution and problems into our own countries. I think when President Trump said, let's redevelop it into the Riviera, the Gaza Riviera, funny. But he had a point, which is you need to find a way for these people to get jobs, great jobs in the hospitality industry, great jobs in a construction industry. But you got to make sure that Hamas is not somehow in that. And I think it was also President Trump saying to the other countries in the region, okay, you guys, if you don't like my idea, come up with something else.
Right.
And that's where they are.
So I'm personally not super interested in a vacation in Khan Yunis, but, maybe others feel differently. But I think that there is a possibility of President Trump sort of putting pressure on countries that, needs something from us. For example, lowering the tariffs. Like, do you think that that's how America is going to get involved in this relocation plan, sort of putting the pressure on third-party countries to say it's time for you to step up and take some of these Palestinians from Gaza?
Well, and also remember, we give a lot of aid to those countries.
Yeah.
We give Jordan a lot of aid. We give Egypt a lot of aid. And what are we getting for it? So, again, President Trump uses the commercial leverage that we have, trade, economics, as you point out, the tariffs, to get something for it. And what we get for it is maybe in some cases helping the United States economy, but in other cases probably helping what's going on in the Middle East. Yeah, I think he will absolutely use especially the aid to Egypt and to Jordan and to the other countries in the region who might want American aid, like Syria and others. One of the selling points that the Saudis used with the new Syrian leadership, the guys who used to be terrorists but we're hoping are now going to be responsible citizens and responsible leaders of their own countries, is, hey, look, what happened with Egypt, what happened with Jordan? They were at war with Israel, they made peace with Israel, and now look, they're friends of the United States, they get a lot of aid from the United States. So maybe Syria, you should follow that same direction. So all of those things, Trump is not going to be the first guy to put more boots on the ground. He's the first guy who's going to lean on the economic and the commercial relationships we have.
KT, swinging over to Russia, the president dropped a barnyard epithet this week describing what he's been getting from Vladimir Putin. Starts with a B and ends with a T, multisyllabic. What do you make of the current state of affairs here, as the president also said that it looks like they're going to have to rearm the Ukrainians, so no peace in our time, it appears.
Think of how this has evolved in the last 4 months. 4 months ago, President Trump had the Ukrainian leader in the Oval Office, and there was that huge blow-up with Zelensky, right? Because Zelensky said, well, we're not going to agree to anything unless you provide basically NATO-like security guarantee for Ukraine. Now, that's all changed. We now have an economic relationship with Ukraine with the rare earth minerals deal. President Zelensky has understood that, let President Trump come to his own conclusions about the Russians, and I think that's where we are now. And even though Putin was stringing Trump along saying, oh, no, we're going to be good, we want to negotiate, we want to end this war, it's now pretty clear that Putin wants to go in his own direction. I would not want to face a Donald Trump who feels he's been played. Remember, I'm a New Yorker, and I can tell you there is nobody more than a New Yorker, and especially a New Yorker from Queens, who gets mad if he's been exploited and taken advantage of and strung along. And then add to that the construction industry, which Donald Trump comes from. I think he's rip-roaring mad that he's given Putin every opportunity to have a good relationship with the United States and to have this resolved peacefully. And if Putin isn't going to be there, I think Donald Trump will all of a sudden decide, we will arm Ukraine, we will help Ukraine. Again, no American boots on anybody's ground, but I think he'll support President Zelensky, and I also think he'll, again, use the economic weapon now against Putin.
By the way, Zelensky met with the Pope, said that he's hoping that the Vatican, in the personage of Pope Leo, might be able to broker a deal or at least facilitate a conversation. Do you see any end in sight here? Is that the solution, perhaps?
That the Pope is going to get everybody to agree? Yeah. I think that, well, look, Donald Trump is the deal maker in the world right now, and it'll be up to Donald Trump to figure out how to thread this needle. But the one weapon Trump has left, which he has been reluctant to use, is this huge weapon of secondary sanctions against Russia. We don't trade with Russia, so that's not going to. American sanctions don't make a difference. But we could make pretty sure that Russia isn't allowed to sell its oil or natural gas to other countries in the world, and that effectively bankrupts Russia overnight.
All right, we'll leave it there. KT, always a great conversation. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
WMAL, making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios. Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
Well, we don't want our memory to fade too quickly over the weekend's horrific events in central Texas and the Hill Country, as families continue to wait now to hear word of their missing children and family members. Can you imagine, Bethany, having to wait days and days and days to hear news about whether your loved one did in fact survive this horrific event?
I mean, it's a search and rescue situation at this point, and there's still 173 people unaccounted for. So it's search.
Yeah.
Search and recovery, I should say.
173 unaccounted and 120 officially dead in this devastating event. And meanwhile, on the left, Democrats, activists, media members continue to try to use this as a political weapon, and sometimes, I mean, it's evil and it's wrong and it's sad and it's despicable, and by the way, it's fraudulent, as the facts on the ground don't point to any kind of problem with the National Weather Service or with the President Trump and his priorities in any way whatsoever. If you want to point a finger of blame, I guess you could point to local officials who chose not to get an early warning system, even though they recently debated it. But again, to dwell on that and to try to, blame a politician. I mean, natural disasters happen even with early warning systems. They didn't have big sirens going. Everyone has a cell phone. Everyone gets alerts on their cell phone. People were getting alerted. That said, because those accusations don't seem to be sticking, and because this White House is very good at fighting back and defending themselves, first time in my lifetime I've seen a Republican presidency good at that. So instead, they're going back to their they're going back to the old talking points of 50 years ago about how this is really the environment's fault, and really ultimately it's the problem of capitalism. Here's Bill Nye, the actor who pretends to be a science guy, on CNN with Dana Bash. This is unbelievable. Listen.
You can't just float your way out of it.
Yeah.
It knocks everything over. Everybody knows you pick up a bucket of water, you know how heavy it is. And you get a lot of water going that fast. So what are we going to do about it is the ancient question, and it would be to stop burning fossil fuels. When you're in a hole, stop digging, and so on. But the fossil fuel industry has been very successful.
All right, enough. How do you stop these things from happening? Bill Nye says, stop burning fossil fuels.
It rained because I have a giant SUV.
Yes.
That's the science we're getting from Bill Nye, the science guy.
Yeah.
Who thought it was a good idea to bring on a fake children's scientist on CNN to have these conversations? How pathetic is it that's the well that you have to dig in to get your expertise?
That said, as Bill Nye just said, if you're in a hole, stop digging. Maybe the producers at CNN should take that advice when it comes to their programming decisions.
I mean, the bookers, come on.
Meanwhile, it would take a feat of extraordinarily imbecilic behavior to outdo Bill Nye. And yet we have a winner, ladies and gentlemen.
Here we go.
Jasmine Crockett, Congresswoman from Texas. This affects her state, her region, her district. And again, death toll, 120. Many of them young, innocent children killed in the middle of the night, the most horrific way. But who's the real victim? Jasmine Crockett. Listen to this.
So anyway, I just wanted to jump on because my heart is truly heavy for all of these families. The sad part is, I think that my heart is going to carry a level of weight that will continue to weigh me down as we have to continue to do our best to survive an administration that literally is against us.
Enough. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. We need to relieve her of that weight. Yes. And have her go work through that trauma by herself back in Texas in her house. And we can have another representative in Congress representing her district that is a pathological narcissist.
In case you missed it, in reflecting on the death of these children in these floods, in her district, in her state of Texas, reflecting on the fact that there's a death toll of 120 and still 170 plus missing, presumed dead. The sad part is what again, Jasmine Crockett?
The sad part is, I think that my heart is going to carry a level of weight.
Yeah, that's the sad part.
This is why we need to have people in Congress who care more about themselves. You need to care more about than just yourself. I know that that's hard to be a member of Congress and also care about more things than just yourself. But this is.
No. Put a pause button on your condemnation of narcissism in the Democrat Party, because we've got Eric Swalwell, my friends. Cut 32.
What my colleague Benny Thompson is saying is, yes, we need to seek accountability here. Don't jump to conclusions, but it's not surprising that if you fire senior leadership who run the National Weather Service, you're not going to get the best weather predictions.
Actually, the weather predictions were fine.
We did. They were fine. There was warnings. There was everything.
Right on line.
All of the things. Sometimes sad things happen.
All right, so we got Jasmine Crockett focusing on what the really, really sad part of this story was, which was the weight that she'll have to carry around in her heart. But Gavin Newsom, always a positive thinker, always looking at the glass half full, he found the silver lining in this story while campaigning in South Carolina. Here you go.
After all, the natural disaster that occurred and it continues to occur and unfold in Texas may have humbled him.
There you go.
That image you saw.
It may have humbled Donald Trump. The death of hundreds of people. It may. So, hey, listen, the important thing as we talk about what's going on in Texas is how is it going to affect Donald Trump and help my presidential career? Wow. Gavin Newsom.
Wow. I how many times can I use the word narcissist?
Well,
I need a thesaurus on my desk. Because
how about egomaniac? How about pathological liar? Mm-hmm. How about psychopath? I mean, Gavin Newsom fits the bill across the board. It's 8:23.
Making sense of your world.
Greatly appreciated.
News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
I love listening to you.
Making sense of the news.
Coming up, buckle up. It's always a wild ride with our friend and sometimes arch nemesis, Sean Spicer, next.
WMAL-FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station. Making sense of the news. News Talk 105.9. WMAL. News now. Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
It's Larry O'Connor with Bethany Mandel, and let's hear yesterday James Comer, chairman of the Oversight Committee in the House, revealing what happened behind closed doors when they were preparing to question Dr. Kevin O'Connor, Joe Biden's physician. And sadly, it didn't last very long. Here's what happened.
There was nothing asked in the beginning that would pertain to doctor-patient relationship. This was a question, were you ever told to falsify medical documents for the President of the United States? And he pled the fifth. And then we asked the question, did you ever doubt his mental capacity to fulfill the duties of the presidency? And again, he pled the fifth. The only thing he answered was his name.
Wow. So this raises a lot of questions, and I think many people did think he would claim doctor-client privilege or something, but not the fifth to prevent self-incrimination in an underlying criminal investigation. Joining us right now is Sean Spicer, of course, the host of the Sean Spicer Show, and he worked in the Trump White House first time around. And I don't know about you, Sean, but I didn't see pleading the fifth coming here in this scenario. This starts getting pretty interesting, doesn't it?
It does. I feel like that someone at C-SPAN should be figuring out how to make a show out of this, because it's a twist and turn that you never saw coming.
Yeah.
You know, I did. I was with you. I was with you, Larry. I was like, okay, I get it. And frankly, I'd be shocked if he didn't say, hey, I can't talk about this diagnosis. Right? There's HIPAA. We all get that. There's doctor-patient confidentiality. And so I understand that. But when you are making public pronouncements, as Dr. O'Connor did, about his fitness, when you have had previous business dealings with them, those are all fair game, right? And I know, like, I've had a lot of people on my podcast that are very important lawyers that say, hey, technically the Fifth Amendment is not a defensive mechanism that an admission of guilt, if you will. But when you do it out of the gate, before you get asked a question, Dr. O'Connor said, on the advice of my counsel, I will not answer. Why? Like, you weren't even asked a question yet. Right. All Comer could have said is, how are you?
How you doing today?
So
how was the drive over?
But Bethany, before you, here's the thing. Anybody that has any understanding of who has seen a doctor, and I know these days it's more challenging to see a primary care physician because of what Obamacare did to the system, but I digress. The idea that we all knew that was possible, that's all he had to say, and everyone would have said, oh, that makes sense. But he had something to hide, and we all now know it.
Yeah.
Sorry, Bethany.
No, I mean, you're making great points. And my question is, if he's pleading the fifth, obviously he's afraid of something criminal. So what kind of affidavits could he have been signed? Like, what made him potentially legally liable that he potentially lied about? How does this game out?
Remember, and James Comer brought this up, that when they were out of office, so O'Connor,
no relation.
Wow, wait a second.
No relation.
I just put this together. Oh, I get it. Oh, my God.
It all makes sense now, doesn't it, Sean?
Okay, I get it. Bethany's moving into the seat. Bill Hess and the folks at WMAL are getting ready for the hammer to come down.
Sean's gunning for your job, Larry.
He's been gunning for my job for a decade now. That goes back to the Breitbart years.
I cannot believe I put this together as Professor Plum with the candlestick in the library. Larry O'Connor. Oh, my goodness. So, look, the end of the day, I think, here's the thing. So, Dr. O'Connor was the primary care physician for Vice President Biden. Then he continued to treat him and work with him in business dealings after he left office. So if you're O'Connor, you know that you're exposed to things that are not covered by patient-doctor confidentiality, number one. Number two, you couldn't even exert executive privilege because you dealt with him in non-medical ways, non-healthcare related ways, non-HIPAA covered ways for the 4 years that he was out of office. Yeah. And therefore, he knew he was exposed and culpable to accusations and insinuations and threats of potential, legal action for what he did outside that scope. And so, but again, what he asserted that right so quickly. You have to know that he had gone through this. And oh, by the way, here's the other thing that was interesting to me. Homer made this well known, 2 months ago that this is happening. If you had concerns with what the committee or the scope of what they were going to ask, it's commonplace for your attorney to call their attorney and to say, hey, look, we're going to talk. We're willing to play ball, but here's what we have to do. Now, can I just say one quick thing? Because this is where I want to give advice to Mr. Comer and the rest of the folks that are listening this morning. The one area, and I don't mean to make this sound like just that they have failed to call Corinne Jean-Pierre. And she went out and made very public statements about Joe Biden's fitness for office. She is not covered by anything. And so I think that they need to bring her in and say, who told you to say that and under what basis? Because she made very public statements about his fitness for office and her determination. She said, he runs circles around me. He does this. And I think that we need to start to break the veil. And I find that the easiest place is where the weakest crack is. And let's face it, she is the weakest link.
That you exactly the direction I was going to take. You've worked in a White House, and you have to balance your loyalty to the principal, in this case, the President of the United States, the most powerful man on the planet, and he does need to have people loyal to him. But at the same time, you take an oath to protect the Constitution. You're serving the American people as well. And do you have these conversations? Is it something that people who work in the White House openly discuss, saying, yeah, listen, we want to protect the big guy, but at the same time, I can't get in a position where I'm harming our nation or perhaps potentially putting myself in legal jeopardy?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I mean, and I think a lot of people deal with this in their jobs every day where you're in marketing and you're talking about a product. You want to put the best face on your employer, your job. But you know where that line is. And those conversations happen every single day, whether it's a personnel announcement or a policy pronouncement where you want to hype it up. That's your job. But you have to be able to walk up to the line and know where that line is. Yeah. Now, look, for me, this is personal, Larry, because and you may have heard this, but I faced a lot of criticism for some of the things that I said and did. Huh. And my question to every single person out there that hated on me is this. If you didn't like some of the things that I said about personnel, events, etc., but you have no problem with Corinne Jean-Pierre and Jen Psaki lying about the fitness for office of the commander-in-chief, then I think you have your priorities really backwards.
Yeah, I think he's talking to you, Bill Kristol. Sean Spicer, always good to talk. By the way, Bethany, I just wanted to, because Sean and I have known each other for a long time. You know how you know somebody, but you don't really know them until you see them in their element? Uh-huh. I got to spend some time with Sean Spicer in Newport, Rhode Island. Let me tell you something. I feel like I really know Sean Spicer now. Oh, that was a man in full. up there in Newport.
I got to be honest with you. Larry sits and I use the restroom, and I walk upstairs. He's going through the drawers. I was like, dude, what are you doing? You let someone into your house.
I want to be invited on this trip.
Yeah. Let's just say the invitation was not like the all access pass, and the next thing you know, he's rummaging stuff. Do you still wear this? Can I have this? And I'm like, dude.
Like I could fit into your stuff, please.
Yeah, I know. Well, you're working on it.
Thanks to co-pair weight loss. I don't know about that, Larry.
Yeah, it wasn't that direction I was concerned about.
And the worst part is, on the way out, he just hands me a gift certificate for GarageRepair.com that says, "Hey, this is."
Do we get extra?
Thank you, Sean.
Right.
Go to the morning meeting now.
It.
He's a very busy man. He's got his morning meeting with
I know. That's true.
Thank you. It's 8:45.
Thursday on the Derek Hunter Show, Democrats are insisting that Donald Trump is driving up inflation. The only problem is the exact opposite is true. We'll talk about it at 3 o'clock on WMAL.
It's Larry O'Connor with Bethany Mandel. Bethany comes from the New York area, as does your husband, Seth. And so because of that, I think people who grow up in New York are more apt to frequent the theater and the performing arts. I think it's just the case because Broadway's there, Lincoln Center, the performing arts, that's a thing, right?
I think that's true. I grew up going to the Met, there's some of my earliest memories are going into the city with my mom.
And the thing I like about New York, or at least back in the day, it's a little different now.
Past tense.
But at the time, it was actually it's affordable. It's like it's not an elitist thing. It is seen. I loved working on Broadway because you saw people from all walks of life, tourists, people who live in Brooklyn and wherever. They just we're going to go see a show, even if you sit in the cheap seats. It's just a thing you do.
Special.
And then something has happened, especially here in D.C., where the performing arts seem to be set aside as this elite thing that you only wear a black tie to and only for rich people and snobs and, frankly, liberal elites. Then comes the Trump takeover of the Kennedy Center, which, by the way, wasn't a hostile takeover. It was just, that's what happens when a new president comes in.
It seemed actually pretty hostile.
Well, all right. It may have been hostile.
There was a lot of anger on
the reaction was hostile. Rick Grinnell gets in there as the new president of the Kennedy Center, starts uncovering things in the books and the budgets. They got hundreds of millions of dollars at Congress for capital expenses and repairs and improvements. And according to Grinnell, all that money was just...
Remember all that COVID money?
Yeah. It all went to pay for giant salaries. The former head of the Kennedy Center was making like millions of dollars a year. I know this industry. That's outrageous. Anyway, yesterday, Grinnell put out a video, of a room in the Kennedy Center that had water just gushing through the ceiling from some sort of water main break or something. I don't know. But it's proof positive that the maintenance has been, at the very best, deferred, if not completely neglected in that building.
Yeah. His tweet said the BBB saved the Kennedy Center. The discussions the expert were having were, should we tear it down? Can you imagine what a sin that would be? This seminal piece of arts in our country, to have it torn down because of there's so many reasons why. Thank God for President Trump and all the people that he's brought in, but this is one of them. Had Rick Grinnell not come in, yesterday I was just singing his praises about what he's done on the programming side, because I don't know if you remember this. I think it was like 3 years ago. I sent it to Rick, actually. For 4th of July, they had a play about the Founding Fathers, and I am not kidding you. Like this, I thought I was being pranked when I first got the messages about this play, 1776. Portraying the Founding Fathers, played by women and transgender actors.
Yeah.
Talking about the forgotten...
Well, it's actually a great show. It was written in 1968, and it was done properly, and there's a good movie about it. But this revival, which tanked on Broadway, but of course the Kennedy Center embraced it.
They picked it up, and spent our tax dollars
They made John Adams a transgender drag queen. Yeah,
yep.
853.